Hey everyone, Chris Hansen here, and once again, thank you for joining me on another edition of Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. On this program, we're going to take a look at something that is very important to us here at the show: bullying and people taking advantage of others on the internet, abusing, especially when it comes to harassment and stalking. Those who are focused on people trying to create good content on YouTube and Patreon and elsewhere. And it just amazes me how many times this happens and the extent to which people can level false accusations. And if you've been following this show or me, you know that we're friends with another streamer named Wes Moast, who's a very clever and creative guy, and along with another Patreon YouTube streamer, Brittany Simon. Both are joining me for this very special show. Guys, thanks for being with me today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chris.
Wes, you there? Wes's picture is not there, and I should explain at the top of the show that because of what Wes does in his real job, he doesn't wish to show his face on his YouTube channel or streams, which is fine by us, and I totally understand. He's not as big a ham as Brittany or I am. So,
Exactly.
all right. So let's start off. First of all, Wes, you produced a video, and we're going to go to that in a minute. But just to tee this up, we're talking about another streamer who goes by Muse, Recovery Doll, or Plurality Dolls. Brittany, let's start with you. How did you come in contact with this person, and what happened, and why did she so aggressively target you?
Well, about 4 years ago, I was a full-time content creator on YouTube talking about alternative lifestyles and relationships, and they had reached out to me just saying, hey, I needed some comfort and a talk. And at the time, it was very common for me to reach out to the community because I was dubbed Mama Simon, which I was kind of like a mom figure to my community. So I bought them lunch, took them out, and they gave me their life story. And that was the first time we met, and I became, well, inundated with them in my life.
Right. And so you tried to help this person, Muse.
Yeah.
And how did Muse describe themselves to you? There was a lot going on in this person's life at the time, correct?
Yes. Oh my gosh. They had explained to me in a 2-hour lunch period that they had a terminal illness and would die within 2 years, that they were living with an ex-boyfriend who was abusive and a sexual, I guess, assaulter, that they felt threatened, that he was taking all their money, that they needed a place to live. They were homeless once again. She gave me a story about gender, how she was confused about who she was. She had about 3 names at the time that I knew of. None of them you mentioned, which is just adding to the list. And they explained that they were just in turmoil, addicted to hard narcotics, and they needed help. So I offered them, women's shelters and places like that for resources, but I knew that this was not a person that I would want to interact with full time. I just had that gut feeling.
Did you give them money, support, access in any way?
Just resources to like women's shelters and things like that. And I told them that I'm sure there are resources. We lived in Seattle at the time, which everyone knew publicly, and Seattle is a great place for resources for the homeless. And so that is what I offered, but I did not offer anything else regardless of what she claimed afterwards.
And what did you get in return, Brittany?
A person who infiltrated my friend group, who had an affair with my ex, who infiltrated my life, who tried to go on the internet that same day we had lunch to tell the internet, Brittany Simon and I are now best friends and we're going to collab, which I never said during that lunch. So whatever their intent was, it was clear that it was to be associated with me.
And this person was also a presence on YouTube and the internet, right?
Yeah, they claimed to be a public figure. They had, I think, 100 or so subscribers at the time, and their content was poorly executed in a way that I wasn't sure if they were a full-time content creator or a person who wanted to share their life with the internet.
All right, I want you to hold that thought, Brittany. And Wes Moast, how did you first come across this person, Muse?
I was put in contact with Muse because I was working on a story for my YouTube channel investigating a YouTuber who I was told was abusive, and that this person had a history with Muse, and that I needed to reach out to her. So I contacted her, and we started discussing the story a bit, and she told me a very similar story to what Brittany's talking about, without the terminal illness, but There was a long list of medical ailments. She also went into the fact that not only was this ex-YouTuber abusive, but her current roommate where she was living was abusive, that she was in danger of infection because of her feeding tube, because she says she has gastroparesis and she does have a real feeding tube, but she made it very clear that without getting that feeding tube changed in a matter of days or weeks, that it could be septic, she gets sepsis and could die. So right off the bat, it was I'm suicidal. I mean, because that was one of the things she said, and the multiple personalities and everything else going on with her. It was a lot. Just like Brittany said, it was a lot to take in a very brief conversation.
Wes, you put together a piece, a video piece. Set it up because I want to play that for folks now.
So this video, because I've made a series on my own channel, but I wanted to make a video to tell the whole story in a shorter version, to just kind of tell everyone from beginning to end how this went from me trying to help this person who said they desperately needed to get back to Washington State, where I happen to live, so that she could get this emergency surgery done, and how it went from that to me now facing charges for domestic violence and dealing with it. Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And dealing with an active court case. So, and it all happened within a matter of 3 months.
3 months. All right, Wes, Brittany, let's take a look.
Once upon a time you dressed so fine, threw your bums a dime in your prime.
Very soon, and we also are working on a project that I think you'll find interesting with our friend Wes Moast, a YouTube streamer who's had a series of interesting experiences. So we'll be.
I don't want to be that guy, but that's a bit of an understatement. By the time I finish telling this story, you'll be taken on a dizzying tale of lies, greed, the awful depths of the human psyche, and revenge. This video is for those of you who may need this warning now or in the future. The people who will prey upon you. The very people that will take advantage of your desire to do good come in all sizes, shapes, colors, and sexes. I learned the hard way. This is YouTuber Muse Talks.
Hey.
More accurately, she was Muse Talks. She was also Recovering Doll, Plurality Dolls, Winona Riley, and countless other screen names and aliases used over the last few years. Her channel's been basically scrubbed from YouTube since I first encountered her just a few months ago.
I've changed my channel name like 5,000 times, but welcome back to Muse Talks.
But her backstory is a harrowing saga of homelessness while suffering from a number of mental and medical issues. One of them being gastroparesis.
So it turns out I have gastroparesis, and this is my new way of eating food.
A condition that had her on a feeding tube nearly 24 hours per day because, as she puts it, solid food could lead to cardiac arrest.
Basically, if I would have kept on just eating, I could have died of a heart attack. And that's no, understatement, or, it's not an exaggeration.
In her own words, she is a vulnerable adult.
Vulnerable adult. A vulnerable adult. A vulnerable adult.
A walking, talking medical marvel who, despite everything life has thrown at her, manages to bounce back and not just live, but thrive. On top of the almost insurmountable medical mountain she faced, she was kidnapped and raised by a cult as a child. A victim of domestic violence. Doxxed, threatened, and repeatedly harassed online, accused of animal abuse, and shockingly, almost a victim of human trafficking in 2016 when she fell under the spell of an unnamed man and woman in Seattle, Washington.
They said that it did sound like human trafficking.
These stories have been told and retold, often with a link added to one of several GoFundMes, an Etsy store where she proudly proclaims to be actually autistic, and her Patreon, where she is creating a community from healing and growth.
You serious?
In March 2020, in yet another tragic turn in the twisted life of Muse, she was almost a victim of human trafficking for at least a second time in the state of Washington.
Every
escaping human trafficking, and today I'm meeting with the person to get my belongings back. Are you involved with the human trafficking, or you're a victim? I'm a victim.
She had bravely left the home of someone she would claim to be her abuser, and here's the real crazy part. I am the person she was accusing. On March 12, 2020, I was almost arrested in front of a Walmart in Chehalis, Washington, because she was accusing me of trafficking her.
I'm a victim.
A crime that carries a sentence of 20 years to life. This is a story about professional, monetized victimization and recognizing the patterns of selfishness and sociopathy of people who operate outside the realms of human decency. People who hide behind a veil of vulnerability and fragility only to attack when you least expect it. Let me introduce myself.
Your boy, Wes Moast.
And I don't just have a big stack of receipts, I have a theme song.
Remember, we're a pathological liar.
In order to tell my story, I have to go back a few years to how we got to this point. Brittany Simon is a longtime educator in the alternative lifestyle community. She had been a figure on YouTube almost since the time she graduated from high school, building an online following and earning the moniker of Mama Simon. When Muse reached out sometime in 2016 asking to discuss issues she was dealing with, Brittany agreed to a lunch meeting. Muse was open with the sad story of hard drug addiction, abusive exes, alleged assaults, habitual homelessness, and a grim medical diagnosis, including a number of physical and mental issues.
When I first met her, she had a drug addiction, she had BPD, she had anxiety and depression, she had suicidal tendencies, and she had...
When she declared that she too suffered from borderline personality disorder, the same condition Brittany was open about in her own videos for years, it was an admittedly strange coincidence. Muse didn't stop there, telling Brittany she was terminally ill and had less than 2 years to live.
She claimed, when I met her for lunch, she claimed to be terminally ill and that she would die within 2 years.
This has now been confirmed by 3 separate, independent witnesses who knew Muse during this time and confirmed her story of terminal illness. Brittany had seen enough and recognizing danger, knew Muse was not safe.
Hey, I had lunch with somebody. They don't seem very safe or stable, and I don't want to interact with them anymore.
Over the next 18 months, Brittany began to notice Muse at more of the events and classes she was attending, getting closer to her group, closer to her man. Then suddenly, like a jolt of lightning, Brittany was struck with the news. Muse and her partner had started a physical relationship behind her back. Brittany was upset at the betrayal by both parties and left. Not just her relationship, she left the state. This was mid-2018, around the same time that Muse added dissociative identity disorder to her long list of medical ailments.
From her DID only became something she talked about like a couple years ago when she started seeing my ex.
Months went by. And sometime in 2019, Brittany's ex reached out for help with his love life. Returning to Seattle, Brittany somehow managed to help her ex-boyfriend and his current partner navigate choppy relationship waters. To be fully transparent, Brittany did still have feelings for her ex, and she let Muse know that, but she was willing to help nonetheless. By this point, the relationship between Muse and her partner, Brittany's ex, had similarly crumbled, and the terminal illness that was once going to end her life had vanished. When things finally ended, he asked Muse to leave and she begged him not to go.
Sorry isn't good enough.
I'm trying to change my behavior. We're in therapy. We're trying. Why is this happening?
Because you have said we need to talk about termination, so now we're talking about it. Well, you can't be in a relationship with me. Congratulations.
This completely contradicts her claims that she tried to leave and was gaslit into staying, but that's her pattern. The only consistency in her stories is the amount of inconsistencies they contain.
Remember, we're a pathological liar.
She had already accused him of domestic violence at the school that she attended and they both worked at, but after an investigation, it was determined to be false.
Title IX coordinator is doing an investigation for the school because the school has to get involved in it as well. The whole situation happened because I had reported to my boss what had been going on.
She says the manager had to call for her because she is a
vulnerable adult.
A badge she wears with absolute honor. She did ultimately leave to stay with her family, and just a short time after her exit, her ex would get the surprise of his life when he learned that he was being accused of sexual assault by Muse. The claim involved a planned physical act that she had discussed via text message with Brittany Simon before and after the event took place. In her own discussion with Brittany about the alleged assault, it was her family who later gave her the strength to report the incident. But in the many tweets and videos she made about the subject, she claimed it was her friends who encouraged her to come forward.
My friends that were like, you need to report, you need to like let Brittany know what's going on. Because
Muse will be taking her ex to court for an order of protection, and her call to the police had started an investigation for the non-existent assault. With the truth in tow, Brittany did the only thing she could think of. She helped her ex fight these false charges. Muse went on the rampage, slamming Brittany on Twitter and YouTube, accusing her of supporting someone who, in her words, was a monster. She had no receipts, showed no proof, but she didn't need to. Nobody questioned the sick girl with the horrifying story. The drama won over common sense, and Muse was seen as a triumphant survivor.
And I prefer the term survivor, but she uses victim in the video.
I'm a victim.
Rather than someone who was literally just pointing fingers and stirring the pot. Finally, in the fall of 2019, they went to court and the restraining order was quickly granted. In most states, one person only has to claim they are fearful of the other in order to get a successful restraining order. And without a good lawyer to represent you in a baseless case like this, the judge is more likely to err on the side of caution. The other charge for the alleged abuse during a consensual physical encounter was thrown out a month or two later when the evidence provided by Muse herself proved the event was mutual.
Who would lie about that? Like, that's the strangest thing to lie about.
Around this time, Muse added a few more elements to her medical profile. She was now on a feeding tube. She also would soon add EDS, autism, and a few other afflictions were either added to her online profile or openly discussed anywhere she could. Muse adopted the moniker Recovering Doll and continued unleashing a flurry of videos and posts about overcoming abuse, domestic violence, recovery, and so on. She made claims that Brittany and her ex were grooming young women to turn them into house servants. And that's the other thing I found about her. She has certain patterns she subconsciously follows that makes tracking her victims and verifying their stories almost effortless. Like this, for example. Muse is perhaps the most vain person I've ever met, and she has a plethora of professional and semi-professional photos in her possession. But what photo would she use when she went live with streamer Realstream News to discuss the situation with Brittany Simon? One that made it appear she was on her deathbed, or as many have told me, they thought she was undergoing chemotherapy. And if you need proof of that vanity, look no further than this May 2020 stream when someone had the audacity to question her after she called herself pretty.
I'm a published model. You're f***ing dumb. Your back-ass, like, insults really don't work. Like, you telling me that you think that I am unattractive, I am so glad that you find me to not be pretty. Because if I had to have people around you in my vicinity, whew.
Wait a minute. Who are you?
Another pattern? How about claiming none of your evidence can be shown because of a looming court battle? She did it here when discussing the Brittany Simon incident.
It is the whole story. It is all I can provide with you guys right now, without screenshots and things of that nature that are being submitted to not only the civil suit, but also the criminal case.
And she did it with me just a few weeks ago while accusing me of yet another crime.
As you guys have known in the past, I don't do court battles with receipts public. I don't do that. Everything that I have gets submitted to court.
How convenient is that? Wow.
The general public was either unaware of the lack of proof or didn't care. Muse guested on a YouTube program or two, spreading her story of abuse and watching her subscriber base slowly tick up.
I feel more empowered by this situation than I expected to be. Very emotionally manipulative.
Muse was homeless again after eviction, but before she left, she had a sale, a blowout of her items that needed to be liquidated due to eviction. These are manipulative. Each posting mentions abuse, a disability, or domestic violence. Not only would you not try and negotiate with this person, but you would maybe even give her a little extra money to help get her back on her feet.
Emotionally manipulative.
She quickly found another place to live, this time accepting a live-in nanny position on a farm for a couple with a young child.
I picked her up at the train station on October 4th. We offered her free rent and utilities in exchange for babysitting our 9-year-old daughter on Thursday and Friday nights.
According to him, Muse was open about having an eating disorder, which necessitated the feeding tube, but was not transparent with the other ailments she later alerted him to.
I was only aware of the feeding tube and the previous struggles with anorexia. She rarely used the feeding pump. The whole setup was a fashion accessory to her. She ate steak, spicy tacos, French fries, and candy constantly.
The EDS diagnosis has become a hot-button topic, as has the autism she claims to have.
There you go.
Yay! You did it! Putting an event in your calendar is hardly proof of anything, but I actually spoke with the man who took her to that appointment.
I drove her somewhere almost every day, even took her to a doctor appointment in Seattle. It was a mental disability clinic where everyone else was either Downs or equivalent. She went there hoping for another disability to add to her resume. When she came out, she was disappointed in not receiving the desired diagnosis, but was happy they told her that one of her conditions could carry the hypermobility gene. She would bend her fingers back and say, "See?" like it was a badge or diploma.
Yes, it was the same person that she stayed with while living on that farm. She didn't have what she was hoping for, but just like that, she was able to add EDS to her list of ailments. It's the same thing with her autism. While she had an Etsy store that claimed she is #actually autistic, what she has, according to her own recent TikTok video, is a referral from a general doctor to a specialist in order to be tested for autism. That is not the same thing. When he saw her post this tweet sometime later, he saved it because it struck him as odd. She was collecting and displaying ailments like they were Beanie Babies, and it was a red flag.
She wore her ailments like medals. She is a professional pity party, always a handicapped, disabled person that is continuously being victimized, looking for sympathy, handouts, gifts, help of any kind.
Back on the farm, it became difficult to know which identity of Muse would be coming in the door, and she soon became unreliable, disappearing for a few days with a very weak explanation.
I told her we were done trying to deal with her and no longer required her services, and this was her 30-day eviction notice. She came back a few days later to grab some things, and I haven't seen her since.
She left behind a huge mess, feeding tube formula and supplies, and a bunch of empty Amazon boxes. This is also the pattern.
This is about the only factual thing that people get right, so we do have a bit of a shopping issue.
She was quickly setting up her next move, flying across the country to Georgia to leech off of another good-hearted human being feeling sorry for the homeless disabled girl who was so often victimized. She told her future roommate that the couple at the farm in Washington had been trying to groom her, basically turning her into a house slave.
We're a pathological liar.
The exact same thing she had earlier blamed Brittany Simon and her ex of doing, and the same thing she would say I did just 3 months later. It was December 2019. Somewhere around this time, Brittany Simon finally had enough of the abuse and backlash from the relentless onslaught that Muse was throwing at her. With over 70,000 subscribers and 9 million plus video views, Brittany Simon left YouTube for good. In a twist of fate, Muse would very quickly fall into controversy of her own. One night, while streaming on a campsite, she allegedly kicked her service dog. The video was quickly covered by YouTuber Realstream News, and people began turning on Muse, disliking her videos and leaving comments about animal abuse. How did she handle this? By accusing RSN of abuse, doxing, and harassment, and once again people were quick to believe her stories. She called the police and FBI, but she soon learned talking about someone online isn't a crime.
That's really yucky.
Now residing in Georgia, the living situation for Muse had turned rather quickly. Muse's ex-roommate, Kat, actually suffers from many of the same medical conditions that Muse proclaims to live with, but as she put it, anytime she was in pain or dealing with an episode, Muse would claim to also be in pain, only hers had to be worse. It was odd that Muse, who would often dance and perform on cam with no issues, would go to the grocery store and insist on using the electric cart as if she was incapable of walking, almost as if it was a show for attention.
Maybe do a little bit of self-reflection. Just a thought.
It was around this time that I met Muse. I was put in contact with her for a story I was researching, and she let me know about her poor living conditions with an overbearing roommate and her long list of medical conditions and concerns. She needed to get back to the Pacific Northwest where her state insurance was set up, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, so I offered to help her get back to Washington. Originally, she was supposed to find a room to rent our apartment, but she became more and more insistent that time was of the essence. She regularly told me about her fears of sepsis and also convinced me that due to the doxing she accused RSN of, someone was trying to break into the home she was staying in. I eventually relented and let her move into my home in a spare bedroom with the understanding that it would be a temporary move for a few months until she got onto her feet. Of course, she would later put it differently.
This has felt like a setup from beginning to end.
Just 1 month later, Muse would leave Georgia for good, and I would become the latest victim of a twisted need for revenge. She brought her dog and some suitcases, but of course, left behind the feeding tube formula and supplies, as well as a mess of trash and Amazon boxes. Almost from the time she arrived, I identified personality traits that made me question everything she had told me before. I did not trust her and felt like I was being manipulated. She showed up at the airport in a wheelchair, but I knew she could walk with no issues. It seemed like another thing done for attention rather than necessity. It was the food, however, that was the first real sign to me that all was not as it should be. I had read about gastroparesis and the foods people afflicted with the condition are able to eat, and I made sure to stock up on them at home. None of these foods matched her daily diet of junk food and candy. I was led to believe she was going to be on a feeding tube 24 hours per day, yet it only seemed to be of use when going out in public or when she was doing one of her live streams on YouTube. Muse has said many times on record that I never gave her a set rent amount.
No, there wasn't even an official rent that I could get him to give me. I had asked him like probably 12 different times to tell me how much I was paying.
But here you can see we had agreed on a rate of $300 per month. A week or so after moving in, Muse went out with a friend who lived locally. I asked if she needed a ride or if her friend was picking her up, and she told me they were taking a Lyft. She messaged me on her way back to tell me her friend would also be joining her at my house. This upset me. I wasn't being asked if this stranger could come to my house. I was being told that this person would be coming to my house. Strange that on her petition for order of protection, just a few months later, a legal document signed before a judge, she claimed she was not allowed to leave my house without me.
And so he's been holding you against your will? No, he traveled me across the entire country.
She returned to my home that night angry and passive-aggressive. Just a day or so earlier, I slashed the rent to $0 per month because I was so desperate to get her out of my home. She was happy with the free rent, who wouldn't be? But now, she was upset about how I reacted to her not asking for permission to bring someone to my house, messaging Kat back in Georgia, and complaining about how I was ghosting her in my own home. Not surprisingly, the same roommate who I heard constant complaints about while Muse was in Georgia was now getting the same treatment about me as she went off. With things clearly not working out in my house, she had started working on her next move. She let her former roommate know that she missed her and would want to move back to Georgia if possible, laying those seeds to see what'll sprout later. That same night, I started writing out a set of house rules and expectations, and I would include a new, earlier move-out date of April 30th. This was 1 month sooner than previously discussed, but still much longer than the 20 days the state requires for a legal eviction. On top of that, I was offering $500 cash if Muse managed to move out by the end of March, and $250 cash if she stayed until the end of April. I was monetizing her exit from my home and willing to pay more if she could leave sooner rather than later.
I was being paid to leave.
Because she was horrible to live with. She was dirty, selfish, a slob, a liar, and constantly involved in online drama and trying to bring it into my home. The house rules were completed on March 2nd and given to Muse on the morning of March 3rd. Later that day, she would ask to discuss the rules and new move-out date because, in her words, She was in a panic. She didn't like that she was being asked to leave a month earlier than expected. What she really didn't like is that there were consequences to her actions. I understood, but at the same time I let her know my mental health and sanity were worth more to me than anything else. We were supposed to go to Seattle to cover a court case on March 5th, but it was canceled when the courts were shut down. I let Muse I would not be going to Seattle since I no longer had a reason to make the 7-hour round-trip drive, and offered to pay for a train ticket and drive her to the station. She got the ticket, sent a few passive-aggressive messages about how she shouldn't be on the train, and that was that. The next day, I drove her to the station and dropped her off. This was Thursday, March 5th, and she was originally planning to come back by March 6th or 7th. I was happy to get 1 or 2 days of normalcy back in my home, and she seemed excited for her trip, even live streaming from the train about traveling for emergency surgery and, of course, asking for handouts.
We need help on the GoFundMe because we are still planning on leaving at the end of this month and don't really have a plan of where we're going.
She let me know when she arrived in Seattle and kept me updated on her surgery. She said she would not be returning on the night of March 6th because of the anesthesia she was under, and that made perfect sense to me. In reality, she had called the domestic violence hotline and national trafficking hotline to lie that she had been trafficked. I had no idea about any of this, and the next morning on Saturday, March 7th, I got a message from my now former house guest telling me she was making the decision to stay in Seattle. We decided we would meet a few days later on March 12th so I can drop off her things she left at my house, and I figured that would be the end of it. What I didn't know was that she had already started posting on a private Discord that very morning that she was homeless and had just escaped a trafficker. She messaged me on the morning of the 12th and offered this little statement.
I hope that me leaving early has been good for your mental health.
I didn't want small talk. I wanted to know what all she needed from my house so that I could distinguish it from the literal piles of trash, used bandages, Amazon boxes, and food wrappers she left in the bedroom. She ran down the list and said,
Feel free to use trash bags. That won't bug me in the slightest.
You will notice she asked for just a few non-essential things, but nowhere does she ask for the boxes of formula or feeding tube equipment the state delivered to my house. It was somehow not as essential as her tarot cards, but I get it. Miss Cleo was a fraud too, and she's also from Seattle.
The cards can reveal things that you will never see by yourself. Call me now for your free tarot reading.
The point of her contacting me was made very clear by the next line.
If you need my Cash App again too, let me know.
I realized her feigning concern for my mental health was just a request for the move-out money I had offered, so I ignored the messages, as well as the numerous requests for Cash App payment. While on the way to Chehalis, I got yet another request for the move-out money.
Please don't forget the Cash App.
I got to Walmart a little after 5 p.m. and pulled up next to the car she was in. I chose not to put her things in trash bags and instead put everything in 2 suitcases I let her have and brought along the 4 cases of formula. During a very unhinged livestream in May, she would claim she did not get her essential items back.
Items that didn't get returned to us because they were pretty crucial items.
But what was it that she claimed she did not receive? Well, according to the petition for order of protection, it was a dog mask, a t-shirt, and some photos. I started taking things out of the back of my car when a police SUV pulled up. Muse told me they were there to supervise a handoff at her request, and I was confused. Why? There were no threats, no violence, no effort on my part to keep her things, or any reason for this officer to be here watching me hand over a few boxes and suitcases. She said she wasn't sure what was going on, and the policeman asked if he could have a few words with me. I thought he wanted to get me away from the car my accuser was in so they can load up and leave. But then he started to ask me questions and told me why he was there. Muse had accused me of human trafficking, and he needed to hear my story before we headed to the station.
When did I lie to the police? When? Because I didn't even talk to the police in person.
So this is why she was so adamant about getting paid the money I had offered prior to me getting to that parking lot.
Please, don't forget the Cash App.
She thought I would be leaving that night in handcuffs, and she wanted to make sure the money I was giving her for being a nuisance in my household would be paid before I spent time in jail. Luckily, I had all these receipts. So within 5 minutes of going through my text and looking at the house rules, the police dropped the entire matter and instructed me to contact the Seattle Police Department because filing a false police report is a crime. I sat in my car stunned for a minute and messaged Muse to ask about the trafficking charges the police wanted to talk with me about. She replied back pretty quickly.
They just said I needed an escort. I don't know. They also weren't supposed to leave their cars. That's why I got super anxious.
She then added,
That was some racial profiling, and I'm tempted to complain.
They said, oh, tiny, pretty, frail girl whining, just like you guys do on the internet.
I didn't believe her. I messaged another YouTuber, Tiffany Lockhart.
Tiffany Lockhart, who are you, hun?
And let her know the police had shown up to potentially arrest me for trafficking. I told her Muse was claiming complete innocence, and she reminded me that everything would be revealed on the 911 call. Maybe they really did take things out of hand. Or maybe, just maybe,
I am escaping human trafficking, and today I'm meeting with the person to get my belongings back, so the human trafficking hotline had recommended to call in. I'm a victim.
So yeah, she lied. Her story made no sense, and even the operator was confused as to what was going on, as her story changed from saying she fled after emergency surgery to being kicked out after she refused to be physical with me.
I was based out of Georgia for about 4 months, and then I came back from my emergency procedure and then decided to get rid of me. Then I wasn't going to have sex with him. Oh no.
It was all a lie. Not a misunderstanding, not a result of trauma, but a lie made up to make me pay for asking her to leave earlier than she wanted. The operator clearly instructs her not to contact me until the police arrive, but of course she did reach out again after calling 911 just to make sure of one thing.
Please don't forget the Cash App.
So while the operator was confused, the call went out, and the two words that stuck out to the responding officers were human and trafficking. When I got home, I replied to her message. It's a long one, but I let her know I knew she was making up the trafficking claims. I also let her know she was going to make herself look like a victim in this situation, a situation where she chose to leave after I implemented some simple house rules and set a move-out date 2 months away that I would clear it up on my own. I saw the pattern. I recognized the signs, and I was not going to be her next mark. I don't think she believed me or cared though. The only line that mattered to her was here when I told her I hadn't paid her because I was worried she would have made a scene, and it was a little bit of an insurance policy for me. I was clearly not going to pay her now that she tried having me arrested, and only a complete sociopath would still be standing in front of me with their hand out, asking for the literal handout I was giving before.
You promised me money. After that, I'm gone. I don't want to explain when you act like this. I did what I was told to by my therapist and social workers. That's my truth. I have screenshots of everything. I also don't want to take this to court, but act like that, and I will.
This was starting to sound like extortion. Give her the money and she would be gone? But she said I was a trafficker. She claimed to be an advocate for victims of all types. If she really felt that I was a danger to the public, wouldn't bringing me to justice be more important than collecting a few $100s? Well, why don't we ask her?
But basically why we'd asked for the money beforehand was because we were owed that money. It's in writing in his own contract. And we were trying to see if the police were there, if he was just gonna, and that was the case. No, hun, $500 would not do anything for me. $500 would not, that is over $1,000, like that's $2,000 that I would need. $500 isn't gonna do shit. But I don't want it. If it's hush money, I need a documentable proof that it was hush money. Hey!
This is the same person who made a video claiming she was almost trafficked in 2016, and just 6 months before accusing me, was accusing Brittany Simon and her ex-boyfriend of the same thing. And let's not forget the couple she lived with before moving to Georgia, where she also claimed she was groomed. Why would she be so willing to let me slide?
Yeah, and how exactly was what Wes did not extortion? Because it's backwards extortion.
That's not even a thing. I wasn't going to reply because I wanted to see where she would go next, and she did not disappoint.
All right, Court is. No contact till court. You're already reported. The investigation has already been a thing since I came out of surgery, and the social workers told me that what you did was illegal. I know my rights. I am no victim.
Then I got a request to my email for half of the money via Cash App. This is when it officially became extortion. I let her know if she was able to get the police to confirm that they made up the trafficking charges, I would gladly pay her the move-out funds as offered. Her response was,
I said no contact. You're really not the brightest. You're going to court.
I called the police and reported the extortion attempt, and they were at my house within hours. Later that day, she updated her GoFundMe and mentions the move-out support she did not receive, as if she had been ripped off or cheated instead of telling the truth. Why would she be in crisis mode? And over what? A few weeks later, I released the first video detailing how I was almost arrested for human trafficking, and it was like a jolt through the community who had embraced her for so long. She reacted much in the same way that people often do when they are caught. She disappeared from YouTube and Twitter, played the victim, and claimed she was unable to share the truth because of her open case with the National Trafficking Hotline. So I called her bluff, and I called them. I asked about these open charges against me, and not only did they confirm that there is no such thing as an open case with their agency, but she was able to pull up the information from my police report and offered an apology.
I'm really sorry that this is happening to you.
But as is her pattern, Muse did not stay gone. The 2-year sabbatical she claimed to be taking lasted all of 2 weeks before she was back. Well, where could she go? Her entire identity and life had been tied to being a sickly victim asking for online handouts, and my reporting of her actions had severely impacted that.
If anyone who is currently watching is interested in Patreon, please fucking go help me. Because
like the famous quote says, when the debate is lost, slander becomes a tool of the loser. And this loser came ready to sling mud. She tried using our private text messages on Twitter to entice people to join her paid Patreon because by this point, her GoFundMe career was destroyed, but nobody cared. Tweeting at Onision, someone she once claimed to be staunchly against due to allegations levied at him, fell on deaf ears, and the hate mob she was hoping would show up stayed far away.
I tweeted at Onision, and no one even responded. I was at least expecting the hate mob to be mad that I was using the term psychobrat, and I thought that I was hoping that Onision would at least respond.
If she couldn't get fame, she would gladly take infamy, but what she ended up with was bored indifference. She would leave YouTube again the next day, claiming one more time that she would return in 2 years. This self-imposed expulsion and silencing lasted just another week or two before Muse was back with a wild, ridiculous 2-hour live stream that was all about me. This time, she had once again changed her name and had a new slogan.
I'm not playing this game.
She also had a new complaint.
Because I've been a victim of hate crimes in silence.
I am a victim of a hate crime. Stanley knows what I'm talking about.
That's not what a hate crime is.
Well, I hated it.
But who had silenced her? I certainly didn't. I wanted her to scream as loudly as she could about the truth. It's easy for her though. Because of her claims of DID, she is able to blame different personalities for the awful things that she has done. And again, not surprisingly, Muse, the alter I was supposedly dealing with, was integrated into her system of alternate personalities and no longer exists.
All the time because Muse is gone because of the things that have happened within the past 3 months. But no, you're not looking at Muse. And quite frankly, you're not going to ever again. So.
Poof. Gone. Almost absolving herself of any wrongdoing in the process. When asked who instructed her to call the police when I showed up to drop off her things in that Walmart parking lot, she now says this.
It was the human trafficking hotline. I wasn't around for that. That was mainly Muse was there out there, so.
How convenient is that? Wow.
As a reminder, this is not an indictment on DID. It's an indictment on her and anyone who operates in the same manner and can continue to look themselves in the mirror day after day.
You're making yourself look like a fool. Okay, let's address this. So, brief portion of what's happened. I'm a published model. Screenshot that. Use it in your next video. I don't care anymore.
She desperately needed to become the victim again, so she filed domestic violence charges against me with the court, and then did what any person living in fear would do. Hosted that 2-hour live stream where she accused me of stalking her social media, inciting violence by questioning her medical diagnoses, and she claimed I was working with her ex-boyfriend, the one who she has an actual active order of protection against to conspire against her. I have never met or spoken with this person. She also claims that she has a 5-year protection order against him, but it very clearly is a 1-year order, which expires 3 months from now.
The receipt is the fact that he is not allowed near us for 5 years.
Oh, the lie detector test determined that was a lie.
At the point this live stream was taking place, I had no idea she had filed these charges against me, as I had yet to be served with the petition. The hate mob she had literally begged for a month earlier was in full attendance, but while crying for herself and herself only.
When I've seen you talking about us in a negative way, do you guys not even realize, like, that your actions have consequences? Like,
she uttered the only truthful thing she would spout during that entire day.
I tried to say this was a bad idea, but whatever.
Oh man, such a bad idea. She now stunningly admitted that the human trafficking thing was false, and this was now about something else entirely.
It's not even about if this classified as human trafficking originally. That's not even what this is about anymore. What this is about is the fact that I have been harassed, stalked.
On the live stream, she claimed the order of protection had been granted, saying she didn't need receipts because...
I don't need receipts, honey, because I have a fucking restraining order.
Which was, of course, another lie. Instead, she had just made a request, a perjurous-filled petition which contradicted her own 911 call, her text messages to me, her text messages to others, and her own YouTube account where she live streamed while taking the train to Seattle. Alone. She has twisted her own words so many times, she doesn't seem to know the truth from a lie anymore. When asked about her health records, she will offer this.
I'm not going to go, I don't have records of that. I don't have any medical records on file. Who keeps them with them? I've moved 9 times. It goes into the My Chart. I can't even get into the My Chart right now. I don't know how to get into it.
But just 4 weeks before that stream, on another channel, she had this to say when telling a sad story about her heart and fainting.
I hadn't been looking at like my chart, which is just basically where you can find all your test results and stuff. So I looked at my chart. Apparently I have like a lot more heart stuff going on than I realized. Like I kind of thought that when they were like, oh, you could have a cardiac episode, I was like, that seems kind of melodramatic. No, it turns out that my EKG or ECK, I don't know. I don't study anything dealing with the heart. But that was not good. It was very bad, in fact.
There is really nothing else to say other than this.
Stop it. Get some help.
Truthfully, this order of protection was not about her safety. She wanted me to stop talking about her online because the donations and Patreon signups had come to a complete halt after being exposed.
What you're doing has real effect. What you're doing can affect future things that we want to do. So
she was attempting to silence me, to keep me from telling the story on my channel and now on Chris Hansen's channel because exposure is the worst thing to happen to people like this. She was scared to death that Brittany Simon would start talking again and that the charade involving her ex would be further exposed as well. For anyone who believes that maybe there's some mental growth there, and perhaps now she's seen the error of her ways, here's what she really thinks.
And to answer your questions, Brittany, yeah, we're happy despite everything that you and everyone else has put us through, because what they want, what they've wanted the whole time from us is to watch us crumble, to watch us be put in the same position that Brittany put herself in, where the whole internet came for her throat.
She emphatically states on her legal petition that I am in fact working with her ex to terrorize her, but then on her own stream, she admits she does not know if he is involved or not. It's all lies.
He's fine. He won't be fine if he's somehow involved in this. We'll make sure of that.
There are active felony extortion charges pending in my county, and she actually believes that filing a restraining order on someone who lives over 150 miles away will somehow act as a gag order. She broke her own no-contact order to email me the petition for order of protection and included the following warning.
Any further videos, contact to my friends, or social media posting is a violation. Court is the 21st. I am begging you to knock it off. You already were sent a cease and desist.
She was taking me to court for the exact same thing she had done to Brittany Simon just a few months before.
Brittany herself, though, has a following already online, and it's not so much that I'm trying to tear that down. I have phrased it that way in the past, but it's more so I feel like it needs to be talked about.
Only in my case, I have receipts. I have over a dozen people who have contacted me to share their stories and their victimization, and I did what I do. I made content, never to intimidate. I never use her real name, never give her location, never riled up a hate mob, but I did warn people. Obviously, her scare tactic didn't work, and instead, I hired the same lawyer Chris Hansen used to fight the nonsense charges levied by Onision, and here we are today. If you are listening to this on the night it premieres, I have court tomorrow, May 29th, to fight charges of domestic violence as Muse blames myself and others for the mess she now finds herself in.
What we're confrontational about is the fact that we've been threatened to be doxxed, we've been threatened to be harmed, we've been emotionally abused for about 3 months. It's okay for me to be confrontational.
And that's how the story ends today. But rest assured, it's not over for good, because she's still out there, and all it takes is internet access for her to be fully back in business and on to the next potential grift. If she does indeed want a hate mob, they're here, and the numbers are growing daily. But it's not the mob of clout-building trolls she was hoping for that would boost her profile like a fully grown Little Tay.
This Lil Tay, and I'm the youngest flexer of the century.
Instead, they hate what she has done. Hate that she won't own up to and admit her mistakes and lies. Hate that she has taken advantage of the kindness of virtual strangers, and hate what she has done to the DID community and every other community she has attempted to tarnish with scheme after brain-dead scheme. Most of all, they hate knowing that because of her pattern, there's a very good chance she could slink away, change her appearance and screen name, and infiltrate another community with the convincing story of sickness and victimhood. But if it does happen, if this unevenly matched game of chess doesn't end and she continues to target donors and the unsuspecting public with lie after dangerous lie, I'll still be here with computer in hand to keep making content. Because until she can admit what she did and get help for the hurt she tries to cause me and my family, I'll make sure she isn't able to do that to anyone else. And something tells me Brittany Simon won't be too far behind. Muse, you wanted attention. Well, now you have it. And just like a line from a famous Bob Dylan song, how does it feel? That's it for me. This is a condensed version of the story, and many details, receipts, and victims were left out to save time. To see the full unabridged 3-part series, visit my YouTube channel and subscribe, because this is far from over. I want to thank Chris Hansen for giving me the opportunity to share this story on his platform, and chance to remind everyone that she is not the only one out there. There are a lot more people just like her, who are taking advantage of people, preying on their sense of good, and causing real, tangible damage. One thing is for sure though, I'm out here too. And if they don't know my name now, they will soon.
If I can finish what she started and make this whole thing make sense for you so that you leave us alone, that'd be great. Primarily everything's on lockdown though, because y'all are crazy. If y'all could control yourselves, maybe we would come back. But most of you need to be put in real timeout.
Your boy, Wes Moast.
And I'm out. Thanks for watching.
G Studios.
Wes, do you ever think to yourself, how the hell did I let this human being into my home?
Every day. Every day I do. But I think Brittany put it best when I first interviewed her, is that we're taught our entire lives to help people like this. She looked harmless. She's 80 pounds soaking wet. She has the list of ailments that she gives you. She has a very visible feeding tube, and then she has this cute little puppy. And when you put the whole package together, you're thinking, this poor person needs help. And if you have the means, if you have the way to assist this person, and you don't, and this person does die of sepsis, this person does have any of these things happen, I'm going to feel responsible.
How did you get lured into this, Wes, looking back now?
Well, looking back, it's this person she is very, very good at what she does. I would call it grief bombing. From the very beginning, I got a whole load of grief. I got a lot of reasons to feel sorry for her. I go back and look at the text messages now from early on, which are included in the video. But I was trying to get her to come out in March or April. Let's get to know each other a little bit better. She was supposed to be renting a room or getting an apartment somewhere because she claimed she had the money to do that. But she kept pushing. She kept pushing that she needed to get out here sooner rather than later. And that led to me making decisions that I wouldn't ordinarily make. I've never had a house guest in my house in my life, ever. This was my first and only time I would let someone live in my house. But the grief, the feeling that I am somehow responsible if something happens to her when all this was dumped on me is how this happens.
And do you think you were set up, Wes, or do you think this sort of just happened and she saw an opportunity once you opened the door, opened your wallet?
No, I don't know necessarily if it was a setup, because after I put out that first video, it wasn't just Brittany Simon who contacted me. I lost count at 14, but there were so many people who had reached out who either gave her a place to stay, gave her money, donated to the GoFundMes, were supporting her on Patreon, just giving her massive amounts of support because, your husband has EDS? I have EDS. Let's talk about that. Let's share that. And then that way, when I go on YouTube and I'm talking about my ailments, you'll come and support me because you can verify. So it's almost like creating your own sources on Wikipedia and then using those to say, well, of course, because I have this source right here who can verify I have EDS. And so I believe everyone was just kind of a pawn in this game, but I don't think I was set up because she had no idea when we first spoke where I lived or financial means or anything like that. So it's one of those people who's going to take what they can. And if you have the world to give them, they will take the world and never say thank you. But if all you can offer them is support and a reference and a means so that they can continue to financially grift and get what they need from people, then they'll use just that. Whatever they can, she was trying to build an army of supporters.
And Brittany, how did you become aware that this was happening to Wes, and how did you get in contact with Wes?
Well, I had been off YouTube and strictly on Patreon since December, and then when he had posted his second video, part 2, a friend of mine who had been following the story, who had been kind of watching for Muse because it was such a personal hardship on my family and everything, and she was worried about me, she reached out and said, just so you know, a gentleman named Wes has created a video and you should watch it. And when I watched part 1 and 2, I wept. Not only did Wes so poetically put how this woman infiltrates your life, but he gave me an opportunity to reach out to somebody who made me feel like you get it. You get what she puts you through. It was horrible for my family. Court was so nerve-wracking. Everything was so hard. And reaching out to Wes really just lifted a burden off of my soul to know that somebody else had been so greatly affected. And that's why I referenced, and I will reference Wes as always brave, and he has done so much for my family. I will never be able to repay him because of the way he so wonderfully put just how this woman will affect your life if she ever gets a hold of you.
And give me a sense, Brittany, for the impact Muse had on your life and the life of your family.
I mean, it's for 4 years, this woman spent time infiltrating my friend group, convincing everyone that maybe I wasn't as authentic as I perceive, as I let on to the internet. I try my hardest to remain private while being transparent with my audience. I have been known as an educator on YouTube for literally 5 years, and I had built a wonderful reputation for myself as proof the people who have come and gone and been better because of my interactions with them. But for some reason, this woman was so just skilled in convincing people that because I was a strong woman, because I was Mama Simon, I was a predator somehow. She claimed I had groomed fans, which any patron will tell you I'm very, very cautious with my viewers. They have boundaries. She claimed that my ex and I were taking people off the internet and seducing fans to become our slaves. We are not Onision, and I'm sorry that she has that fantasy with him, but that is not us. And that has never been me, ever. I have been so strict with how I interact with people. So she went after my reputation. I lost thousands of dollars through Patreon, through different ways I was making money because people didn't know what to do. She attacked my mental health and well-being. My family had to take me in September and basically hold and comfort me through a possible, this is a little personal, but I really contemplated suicide at that time because I had spent so much time, oh my God, I'm going to cry, building a reputation for myself. And I'd worked so hard. And for one person who I had tried to help, who I spent countless hours on the phone with, who I'd given resources to, who even after she had the affair with my ex, I literally tried to help her. I have text messages, proof that I told her, if this is your true story, I will help you. But it ended up being false. And so my parents had to watch their grown daughter not be able to handle this one person. So after some time, I got better. I've been healthy and happy for many months, but it had to come at a price, and I had to leave YouTube for it because I couldn't explain to people the private things she was attacking me for and explain like this woman is a con artist because she doesn't look like a con artist. She looks like a victim.
And what motivates, first of all, my heart goes out to you for, getting to this point where one other human being could have such an impact. We all know when we play in this stadium called streaming that, it can bring out the unwell people who can do very nasty, unexplainable things. I'm so sorry you got that low. That just breaks my heart.
I'm better now.
Thank God. So what motivates somebody like this to do? You're just out trying to essentially help people, maybe make a little bit of a living, streaming. And that's fine. That's why people do it. That's why you're in that business. But why does she target? What goes on in somebody's mind to commit this kind of evil?
I think I wish I knew better. I really wish I knew better because I had dealt with so many people who were struggling with mental illness, who had been assaulted, who were the best people I'd ever interacted with because they were so ready to heal. And I think it gets down to the fact that most of my audience, most of the people who followed me were trying to actually get better. They didn't want to be a continuous sufferer. They didn't want to suffer. And so I think for some reason she almost reveled in it. I think some people, some humans, don't want to get better because then they'd have to be accountable. They'd actually have to get to work, get jobs, pay rent, and own their existence. And my viewers are amazing people who have overcome so many hardships. And for some reason, this one person just didn't want to be better.
Wes, how bad did it get for you? We're talking about criminal charges. She filed criminal charges.
Well, so she was only at my, and here's the thing, she was only at my house.
We saw this in the piece you put together, but how do you end up trying to help somebody? Then thankfully you had evidence to protect yourself here.
Well, yeah, I learned a long time ago that I need to have everything in writing. So all of our communication was via text, was via verifiable ways, and that's what saved me from going to jail the night she accused me of the trafficking. And that's what's helping me now, because after the trafficking charges fell apart, and as you saw, after they turned to an extortion charge against her for demanding money to basically drop whatever charges she said she was going to file against me. After that fell apart, and I continued making videos and spreading this awareness, because that's what this became about. It became about spreading awareness about this person. she went and filed domestic violence and hate charge. She's saying I'm committing a hate crime by talking about her illnesses or ailments and calling those into question. And so I have to go and I hired your lawyer that you use in a very similar case, and I think it's pretty telling. And I hope she wouldn't mind saying it, but she actually said, I believe that she's worse than Onision.
Well, just to back up a second, so the lawyer you used was the same one Mike Morris put me in contact with in the Washington State area when Onision took his crayons and his construction paper and put together a request for a restraining order, claiming that he was being harassed by us, which obviously I think society in general should have the restraining order from being harassed by anything the YouTube psycho brat from Washington State does, but that's a conversation for a different day. This lawyer obviously went in and represented you in this case just within the last few days. What was the outcome there?
Well, she showed up to court because it was a phone hearing because of everything going on. It was a phone hearing only, and she was unprepared and frantic and talking about how terrified she was, and people are making T-shirts, things that were completely unrelated to me, completely unrelated to what she was asking for. She got yelled at a little bit by the judge. She asked for the continuance. Now, the judge did grant the continuation to May 29th, which is next Friday. But what was pretty telling to both my lawyer and another lawyer that I know who I spoke with the case about afterwards, the judge did not extend the temporary order of protection. So that actually expired the day of the pre-hearing on the 21st. So that expired, and the judge did not extend it, did not automatically extend it, and it was not requested to be extended. So the judge seemed to be, pretty hip with what was going on. I mean, the petition is full of perjury. She tells a lot of lies about not being able to leave my home without me, and that she called the trafficking hotline out of concern for my son. The story had completely flipped. And so I'm really anxious. I'm really excited to get back in there on the 29th and hear Naomi do her thing. My lawyer do her thing while Muse goes in there and flounders, because on top of the extortion charge, I'm really looking forward to seeing some perjury charge for the lies that she continues to tell.
What did this cost you, Wes? Not necessarily financially, but just in terms of time, emotion, stress, just as a diversion of what you normally do, which is, a 9-to-5 job and this creative endeavor you have on YouTube.
Let me just, when Brittany Simon first contacted me, she was not 100% convinced that this was not a ruse somehow, that I was putting out this video to get her out of hiding and so that she could be attacked again. So when you're talking about the cost, it's the human cost. It's the fact that I've never let anyone stay in my home before, and I'll never let anyone stay in my home again. I like to help people. I like to donate to charities and do these things, but now I have to question everything and everyone and what their motives are. Because when I thought I was doing the absolute right thing and helping this person out, she not only tried having me arrested for trafficking charges, she's now coming after me. She's making allegations of child abuse. It cost me that, just, I guess, that human feeling where you look at someone and go, of course I'm going to help you. Like, I'd be stupid not to help you. It cost me the trust that I have in humans overall. And that's what I felt from Brittany when I first spoke with her, is that the overall cost is not financial. The money is not a big deal to me. It's the fact that now I can't just openly, not that I openly trusted everyone. I'm not a fool. And that's the other thing, is that I really felt like I don't get hustled. I don't have people rip me off. But in this way, she was so good at playing this victim. She reveled in it. She bathed in victimhood. While other people are looking to overcome things like, being born in the ghetto, and you're like, yes, I was born with no means, but I rose above it. There are those other people who are like, I'm always going to be hood till I die. And it's almost the same thing. Rather than saying, yes, I deal with these ailments, I'm not going to define me. There's the tweet that I showed in the video where she lists her ailments like they're Pokemon cards she's collecting. So far, I have the following. And so that's what it is to me. Like, this person just so badly needs to be a victim that they're going to be a victim by any means necessary. If trafficking doesn't work, I'll try domestic violence. If domestic violence doesn't work, I'll sue for slander and libel. And it just won't stop. And she continues to dig a deeper and deeper hole for herself.
It's almost something you could compare it to Munchausen's by proxy, when somebody does this to their child, except she's doing it to herself for the attention, for the drama. It's I've come across a lot. People always say, "Is there anything that surprises you anymore?" I said, "Nothing shocks me anymore." But this is really at a whole new level.
Well, I spent a lot of time looking up Munchausen, because Munchausen by proxy would be for a kid. Munchausen are for another person. That's the by proxy. Munchausen would be when it's for yourself. And a lot of times it starts off as Munchausen. There's a really famous case. I believe her name is like Bell something. She's in Australia, and she's created the fact that she had this brain tumor and wrote a book and had a best-selling app, and it was all a lie. It raised like $3 million, and it all fell apart on her. She can't even say how old she really is. But when it turns from someone doing it for attention, doing it for the love, doing it for the well wishes, to a financial, then it's called malingering. And I believe that's what we have here. It started out with, I need attention, I want to be special. And as soon as finances became attached to it, and there's multiple GoFundMes that I have, as you saw in the video, when she was doing a move-out sale, when she got evicted, and every ad mentions either being a victim of domestic violence or that she's handicapped. You're seeing this person use this not as a way to say, again, not to overcome it, but to use it as a please pity me, please come and pay more for these things I'm selling because I'm handicapped. And she had a wheelchair in the background. When she showed up to the airport and I picked her up, she was in a wheelchair. Never mentioned a wheelchair. I talked to 4 roommates who lived with her prior to her coming here, never had a wheelchair. But these are the types of things. These are what these people do. And then the finances become attached to it. And then why not? Why are you going to buy? It's easy money.
Brittany, you actually were afraid to talk to Wes because you thought it might have been a setup by Muse.
Right. Yeah, there was.
What does that say about the level of fear you experienced here? And do you experience that level of fear today that she could launch some sort of attack on you again?
Yes, it's weird. I'm comforted by being here, but I don't feel any safer because I'm still putting myself at risk. I mean, my patrons have always wondered where I live, and I've told them I'm not even going to tell you what state I live in because I don't want this person who had made tweets about claiming to find my location. I don't want her to ever actually do that. She is scary to me. My family is afraid, and my parents are wonderful people, and they don't deserve to be harassed by somebody that is dealing with me. And I don't want to live in fear, but that is the cautionary tale of this story, is that I can't trust that she's not going to go that far because she has been willing to go so far in the past. I mean, going after Wes's kid indicates that this is not a game. She is seriously going after people's children.
What do you want people to know most about your experience and Muse specifically?
That the path to hell is paved in good intentions, and that sometimes when you think you're helping the right person without the proper research, you could be helping the devil. And I'm a person who I hoped my reputation would speak for itself. And I think it still does. Genuinely, I think it does overall. But I think sometimes people get caught up in the politics and the image of what a victim should look like, and they forget that bad people, use victim language to appear to be the victim, to convince you otherwise. It is a simple con artist. It is a simple deceiver tactic You appear to be vulnerable, people will treat you like you're vulnerable. I did, Wes did. I mean, it got to the point where I even offered her, even after the affair, a possible place to live with me. And I went, what are you doing, Brittany? She is so good at getting into your own head. Even me, somebody who is so strong and so, I thought, capable, couldn't even handle the way she manipulated, like, stories, the way she twisted things so poetically. It was so overwhelming at the time. And so I guess I just want to give people warning. Don't stop helping people. We should help people, but just be a little bit more cautionary and maybe do a little bit more research before assuming, because, well, if I had just asked her to verify her medical conditions, maybe I wouldn't be here. But I never thought to do that because how rude. But now, that would have saved me 4 years of grief.
And Wes, how many other muses are out there? How careful do we have to be as content creators in this medium?
And that's what I will be focused on going forward, is there are tons of people out there like this. This is not an isolated incident, and this is why I felt that this needed more exposure, because yes, as bad as she is, as much damage as she can cause, she is a tornado, but there are a lot more tornadoes out there. There are people that are manipulating the public, that are manipulating them with fake illnesses, with GoFundMe scams, with Patreon scams, and that's what it all boils to. It's all a con. And these people, whether they're doing it for attention, because even if they're not doing it for financial reasons, it's emotionally taxing.
Well, it takes time out of your day. You know that I had an experience with someone who shall remain nameless because they get off on the publicity, negative or positive, but somebody who worked with me who, ended up being a racist, engaging in hate speak, diverted money from the YouTube channel, harasses, has taken information from victims and shared it with the accused in the case. I mean, countless horrible things, potentially criminal things, and yet this person just won't stop. And you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
It's amazing to me that these people just crave the attention at a level where they couldn't just say, hey, I got some help here. I got a break working for this channel. I can use this on my resume. I can get on my feed with Wes Moast or take the help of Brittany. It's phenomenal to me that people would behave this way.
Well, yeah, and I mean, as you know, I've been dealing with that person who we will not name. I've been dealing with him all year as well. So not only was when that was tailing off was when Muse moved into my home, and I really thought that things were finally calming down in my 2020. And literally days after she leaves, I'm almost arrested in front of a Walmart in a strange city for one of the most awful crimes you can accuse someone for. And I really think when you're talking about people like this sociopathic type behavior, if you can't have fame, you'll take the infamy. And as long as your name, you have these people who would try and assassinate a president just so that their name would go down in history. You say this person's name who won't be named. You say his name anywhere online, and there's going to be someone who knows who he is. And in some way, that's a victory for him. So he'll take it. And she'll do the same, because as evidenced just a month ago, after she was supposed to be such a victim's advocate, she's an advocate for victims of all types, as long as she can get a platform to speak. And she's tweeting at Onision, trying to get his attention, trying to buddy up with him. And then on video, it's very disappointed that he didn't respond to her, that he didn't take her in, as she was calling herself the female Onision, like it was a joke. And that's not a joke to these people who are saying that they were victimized by him. And you're a victim's advocate, and this is how you're doing things. It's unsettling, but it's not surprising.
What's the lesson here? Is it just, I mean, obviously be careful who you bring into your life, who you bring into your, your production and your creativity streams, but it's too bad. You would think that this could be a community where people could share creative ideas, you could expose wrong, seek justice, hear the voice of a victim without this kind of retribution that I have faced, that Wes, you have faced, and Brittany, you have faced. I'm not trying to equate anything that I faced with what you faced, because it's not even the same league. I have some meatball who, you know, tries to harass and does bad stuff. The problem with the meatball, of course, is that they're so stupid that they could do something without knowing it that could harm themselves or others. And that's the danger here. When you talk about racism, it's just absolutely unforgivable, and we don't stand for it here. But, you know, what's the big picture lesson here, Brittany?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think for me, I want there to still be hope in the world. I want people to never feel discouraged to help people. I think I've learned that isolation does better for myself. I live in a very small town with the purpose of helping my local communities. I think sometimes YouTube is this fantasy land where we all get to come together as a community, but there are people on this platform that purely exist to torment, to seek clout, to seek recognition, like Wes said, good or bad, because for them it is about getting their name out there. And I would just like to say, I think the proof is in the pudding. We saw how different people reacted to how corrupt people attack or defame them. And I think if people just paid attention to how people held their own, they would see clearly who was maybe the manipulator and who was the victim.
Wes Moast, final thoughts as we wrap this up, for now at least. I have a feeling this story is not going away anytime soon. What's the lesson here?
The lesson for me is that, you know, predators or these people come in all shapes and sizes and sexes and races. The due diligence, you know, like Brittany said, if she would have asked to see these medical conditions, but how dare you ask to see these medical conditions? But had I been more vigilant. Now, I did look her name up, her real name that she gave me, and there was nothing. But when someone has 20 different aliases, it's really hard to find a trail on them. So, like Brittany said, continue helping people, but don't help anyone if the outcome could lead to something like this. If there's any chance that your family or your safety or your mental health is going to be under attack, then you need to take care of you. Think of it as you're in an airplane. It's going, you know, the oxygen mask drop. And the first thing you're supposed to do is put that mask on your face and you start breathing before you help anyone else. And that's what people, you know, really need to be vigilant about. Even though you think you're doing a good thing, you can be causing a lot of harm to yourself.
Wes Moast, thank you for your insight, your experience, your creativity. Brittany, thank you very much for the same. I wish you both the best. We will stay in touch. This story is a long way from being over on many different levels. And I wonder, and we'll get into this in another stream, the responsibility of YouTube here. That's really something that I've got to dig into. But anyway, Brittany, thanks so much. Wes, take care. We'll talk soon. Collab soon. Thanks for having a seat with me on the show. You guys take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
All right. Wow. What a show there. What an insight into something that's just really unbelievable. And we'll stay close with Wes, and you'll see some collaboration there. As if you've not watched Wes Moast on YouTube, you should. He does a great job editing and very creative, very thoughtful. He's taken on some topics that are near and dear to me, and he has a way of cutting through the BS and getting right to it. So I applaud him, and I'm a big fan. So check him out. That's it for this edition of Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. You take care, and I'll see you soon right here on the YouTube channel.